He's also the High Representative for Infrastructure and Development for the African Union. For Honourable Raila, Chatham House is a familiar location. This is the third time he's here. I was joking to him earlier, maybe it's third time lucky, we'll see. So, Honourable Raila is going to talk about Kenya's 2022 elections, priorities for unity and policy change. As you know, we had Mr. Ruto here last week, so Chatham House is looking at the Kenyan elections, and it's part of a series that we're doing. And we're very grateful to both the candidates, the key candidates that are running in the elections in August, to come to Chatham House and explain to us their vision for Kenya after these elections. This meeting is fully on the record. It is being live streamed. Please, if you've got your phones, put them on silent. If you'd like to tweet, we strongly encourage you to use hashtag #CHAfrica. And we'll make sure that there's an equitable Q&A session after the presentation, both from people who are here in the hall with us today, but also those who are with us globally who are live streaming. So I don't think I want to say anything more except, again, welcome back, Honourable Raila, and to invite you to give a presentation. Thank you very much for coming to Chatham House. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for that welcome, and also for the invitation to come back to Chatham House. As you've rightly pointed out, it's not my first time to be here. I've had occasion to address the audience here before. I'm told that today we don't have the full house here because this meeting is being live streamed, and a number of other people are watching online because of COVID situation. But I want to thank you once again for inviting me to this very historic institution, where great ideas are openly discussed and contested among thought leaders, global statesmen, policymakers, and academics. I come here at a special time in my own political life. Just last week, I was nominated by the Azimio la Umoja, Kenya's largest political movement, as his candidate for the President of the Republic of Kenya. It is an honor and privilege for me to be entrusted with the opportunity, if Kenyans so decide, on August 9th this year, to lead my country at a time of great suffering in the world. And that is why discussions such as these in a forum as important as this could not have come at a better time. So thank you once again. The world is going through very uncertain times. Notwithstanding the COVID-19 pandemic, we are currently faced with a crisis in Ukraine that is sending thousands of people into neighboring European countries as refugees. The Ukraine crisis, like the COVID-19, is a global phenomenon. The United Nations needs to urgently take leadership in finding a solution through diplomacy and dialogue already initiated in recent discussions in the Security Council. And Kenya has taken a very firm stand on this issue. In Kenya, we stand to lose about 10 billion Kenyan shillings worth of exports to Russia as a result of sanctions. That is about $100 million US. We export coffee, tobacco, coffee, tea, spices, live trees, plants, bulbs, roots, cut flowers, edible fruits, nuts, and melons to both Russia and Ukraine. In 2020, we imported wheat, maize, and fertilizers worth about 406 million US dollars from Russia. This might be equally adversely affected by the sanctions and the disruptions of war at a time our economy can hardly afford such a stress. We in Kenya know too well the cost of war as a result of the conflicts in our neighboring countries. Our interventions in Somalia, necessary as it is, has been very expensive to us. It is estimated that we spend at least 2.8 million US dollars per personnel costs alone, on personnel costs alone. As the African Union High Representative for Infrastructure Development, I have come to deeply appreciate the need for linking countries through infrastructure to promote trade, development, and peace. We would rather use the little money we have in financing development than in fighting wars or supporting peacekeepers in our war-torn neighbors, necessary as this has become. As the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya, and as a champion of democratization and good governance in Africa, I will give primacy to the pursuit of conflict resolution and continental peace within the framework of the African Union. In this regard, we in East Africa are proud of the progress in the East African community, which has now expanded its membership and which now stands at 7. Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is now the latest entrant. This now creates a landmass that spans from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. In the middle of COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on our economies, the world needs multilateralism more than ever before. We saw the need for multilateralism when the COVID struck. The real scandal about the global response to COVID-19 has been the vaccine inequity, or what has been called vaccine apartheid. Because of the international outcry, these inequities are now being addressed. I want to personally express my appreciation for countries, especially the UK, Europe, and the US, for addressing vaccine shortages in Kenya and in Africa. However, we need a more structural solution to vaccine inequity to avoid the recurrence of what has happened with COVID. Vaccine manufacturing capacity in Africa is urgent, as is the licensing of vaccines for local production to expedite the vaccination process continentally. And here we're happy that Kenya has now signed an agreement to be able to have vaccines produced locally in Kenya. Multilateralism will also save us from senseless conflicts like the one we are currently witnessing between Russia and Ukraine. I must say that wars of aggression against sovereign states violate the cardinal principles of sovereignty and the inviolability of borders of a state. In Africa, we long realized that reopening grievances over colonial borders would append us all. It's a Pandora's box that must never be touched. And that is why the African Union, and before it, the Organization of African Unity, has stuck religiously to the international law principle of uti possidetis juris, which provides that newly formed sovereign states should retain the internal borders that their preceding dependent areas had before their independence. Kenya's position at the United Nations in full support of the immediate cessation of hostility by Russia and a search for common peace which has found widespread international support. Even though the sanctions imposed on Russia by the West will hurt the economic interests of Kenya, let us ring the bells of peace and summon all and sundry to the round table where all conflicts can be resolved through dialogue. It is in this spirit of dialogue that His Excellency President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and I resolved in March 2018 that Kenya's long-standing conflicts and disagreements among our communities to pay attention to. Then we shook hands publicly and announced our commitment to create a political system that would accommodate our social, ethnic, and political differences in an inclusive democratic process. This is what came to be known as the Building Bridges Initiative, or BBI. The initiative held public consultations and suggested various reforms with regard to public policy, the Constitution, elections, inclusivity in government, endemic corruption, and improving the general well-being of our people. The BBI is currently tied up in the Supreme Court, whose ruling we shall abide by. The spirit of dialogue and handshake continues in the Azimio la Umoja movement, on whose ticket I'm seeking to be the president. Azimio is a broad national democratic movement which puts premium on our national unity, inclusive development, and transparent and accountable use of public resources. I am convinced that our Constitution still needs some reforms. For example, a candid look at the relationship between Parliament and the Executive is urgent. The 2010 Constitution introduced a devolved system of government that has brought tremendous changes in the governance and distribution and the use of public resources at the grassroots. Devolution is here with us to stay. We can only make it better through higher allocation of the national budget to the counties. The Constitution stipulates that at least 15% of the budget should be allocated to the counties. We in Azimio la Umoja coalition propose that the allocation be raised to at least 35% of the national budget. I will pursue this proposal. I have always believed in the dictum that a central government does best when it governs least at the local level. Good. Article 43 of our Constitution guarantees Kenyans basic social and economic rights such as education, health, food, water, housing, and social security. I will purpose to implement this very important article. The COVID-19 pandemic has left our economy struggling. I intend to radically shift focus to supporting the micro, small, and medium enterprises and give them resources for scaling up and fill gaps emerging from the pandemic. I also plan to provide a supportive regulatory framework, including providing linkages with the formal and private sector and public sector so that the micro, small, and medium enterprises can thrive. I plan to increase the agricultural productivity by providing inputs to smallholders in addition to farm subsidies to farmers to enable us to produce for consumption and export. In the long term, I plan for the Azimio to prioritize an industrialization policy that is export-minded and that allows the private sector to drive the export agenda. I will support the private sector to lead a shift from exporting raw materials and agricultural produce and venture into industrial manufacturing with eyes on the international market. We will continue to expand the frontiers of quality public education and also pay more attention to skills-oriented education at the basic level to prepare students for productive work when they do not pursue higher professions at college and above. The current government has done a great job with regard to universal health coverage. My government will take up from where the Jubilee government has reached and eliminate the difference in terms of quality and cost between the public and private health facilities. Universal access must be universal access in word and in deed. I intend to improve health knowledge and awareness among our people so that family, community, and preventive health care are part of our healthcare infrastructure. I also intend to establish an institute for biotechnology and genetic engineering in Kenya so as to enhance our domestic capacity to develop vaccines and pharmaceuticals. Social protection will be central in the delivery of social services to the poor and indigent under my government. I told our citizens that our major reason, I hope that one major reason that I hope to be their leader is to help lift the extreme poor and vulnerable families so that they can access the basics and later support themselves. We will also mount serious war on corruption and unveil fundamental reforms to the structure of our economy. Much has been said about Kenya's indebtedness. Kenya is now approaching US $100 billion in public debt. This puts Kenya in the group of the most indebted, debt-stressed middle and lower income developing countries, now being forced into IMF credit and IMF-supervised austerity programs. Such austerity programs are usually implemented in the sole interest of satisfying the debt repayment at the expense of people's livelihoods. You have no choice in the matter. We will have to seek the indulgence and cooperation of our development partners to renegotiate our debt. I will also audit our debt to establish its actual size. We acknowledge that even our troubles with the debt are in the part caused by corruption, kleptocracy, and a state capture. We will mount a serious war on corruption. Corruption, as it manifests today, is a global phenomenon. We need a new global partnership around this critical issue. Although the tax burden on Kenyans is now unbearable, I will make sure Kenya does not default on debt repayment. In future, we will strive to borrow at a favorable interest rate, negotiate repayment periods that are not stressful, and invest in enterprises that give good social and economic returns. Finally, Kenya is committed to rolling back global warming through drastic reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, particularly at the industrial and corporate level, in line with the Paris Climate Agreement. As Kenya's Prime Minister in the year 2008 to 2013, I was at the forefront in the struggle to save our water towers, expand afforestation, and increase large-scale production of green energy by increased investment in geothermal, solar, and wind power. My government will move systematically to replace fossil fuels with green energy in production and transportation, generally. We have done what we could do to save and preserve our water towers in the country, because this came at a political price that we said we are ready to pay so that we can be able to protect our environment. I continue to be committed to ensuring that Kenya contributes its part in this global undertaking to make our environment much more safe for future generations. I thank you.